Welcome to the Real World Entrepreneur Podcast. My name is Bhairav Patel. I'm the founder of Atom CTO and Atom Ventures.
And my name's Alan and Clarke, and my business is a business growth partnership, and I work with small and medium-sized businesses in Scotland to help them break through the ceiling and achieve their growth. And we start off these little podcasts with just some reflections on what we've been doing recently. And the one I wanted to share with you, Bhairav, was I think so much of what we do in the world of current entrepreneurialism is around technology and development. I met an absolutely inspirational guy this week, and he is at the completely other end of that. His business is all around cows and dairy farming, but the same core principles that guide technology development entrepreneurs are absolutely what he's applying. So I think I actually might try and get him on to one of our podcasts later on, because what he's doing is just simply fantastic.
So what does he do?
What does he do? Well, without preempting when he comes on, he basically was working for Mercedes in their car division, and there was a crisis at the family farm back home. He dropped out the world of cars and went back, and even though he'd been brought up on a farm, he said, I didn't know one end of a cow from another. 8 years later on, he now employs 18 staff, and he's building a modern dairy business with a fabulous philosophy, all driven by, he said, a vision I have of how life can be.
Wow, that's pretty cool. That is definitely non-tech. But having said that, there was a startup I saw the other day that was doing facial recognition of cows for some reason. There was something.
Wow, that
I'm not quite sure why.
That could be a mashup.
Yeah.
I'd be all over that. But no, it's not. There's none of his business that involves coding and developing software. But my goodness, he is. He's got early 30s. He is adopting technology and modern ways of business in everything that he does.
That's pretty cool. So I actually had a few podcasts this week. I did one. Well, it's been a couple of weeks since we spoke, right? So I did one with a lady who is in California who in the 90s, she dropped out of college and early 2000s started her own dance studio and then has been a serial entrepreneur there. Met a guy who left Zimbabwe with, as he says, $40 in his pocket. So he got out of Zimbabwe in 2005 and ended up going to Florida and studying there and has been a serial entrepreneur ever since. He's running 3 or 4 businesses. He's got his own book. He kind of puts us to shame, really, because he's doing so much. And then I met, then also talked to a guy who, another podcast about a company called Videri, who install aquariums into businesses and homes. So they have a correlation between, biophilia, which is around having plants and like we have in our backgrounds here, and reducing stress levels and helping people, reduce their anxiety by having nature around you. So he does that.
That's really interesting because I went and visited, you get to know friends who are neighbours. I visited one of my pals in his office and he has no aquarium at home. I went into his office and I was like, good grief, there was this massive aquarium. And he said to me, number one thing I have in every office is my aquarium. He said it just gives me a sense of what is really going on and something to nurture and grow. So that was really quite interesting. I would never have associated them with an aquarium in all my life.
Well, I mean, it's a question, how are you set up at work at the moment with your home office? Do you have anything around you? Because I've just got screens. And so he made me realize actually that you do really need to have something else in your surroundings to distract you. Otherwise, okay, but that's behind you though, right?
I bought a plant.
Right.
Because my room otherwise is entirely devoid of growth and development. And that gives me great joy in watching it grow and develop. And that's why I have this little background. I love that idea of the tree that finds its spot and just grows and blooms and becomes something of substance. That's why this is my corporate, very grand name, company logo.
The other thing that actually happened to me this week, which LinkedIn is now getting very weird. So I have someone helping me with just going through all the vast number of connections I get. I get some stupid number of connection requests every day. I think it's like 40 the other day. So it's like a couple of hundred a week. And so I can't go through them all. But so someone was going through them for me. And apparently now I'm getting connected to by astrologers and magicians who seemingly want to connect with me. I'm not entirely sure what that's about, but I'm kind of tempted.
Right.
I'm tempted to get in contact to see what it is that they can offer. So free astrology, free palm readings via the web, I guess.
Yeah, there's another subject we can talk about, LinkedIn and its function.
So what are we talking about this week then? I guess people are.
I think what we're going to have a chat about are the frustrations of running a business in the real world. And we all face that. Every entrepreneur I've ever worked with has said, look, this is not how I imagined it would be. There are things that really get under my skin. And the first one that I want to bring up there that I certainly felt when we were developing our business was this idea of we've created a business that we're in control of, but really we are so not in control.
So which business was this?
This is Team Rock. This is our digital media business. We are in the early stages of it. It felt like, well, it didn't feel like, the fact was that we were driving it as hard as we could, but pretty much every major step forward that we took relied on some external influence to make it happen. Whether that was about raising the funding, or we started that business off with an acquisition, or bringing on board the team that we two-paid, that's the one, I nearly said followed there. Two-paid over from another employer. All of these things, it felt like we could have done it all in a quarter or a fifth of the time, but the reality was we had a tiger by the tail and we're holding on, and it was deciding where we were going.
But how did it, because obviously when you're starting a business and you have a vision of where you want it to go, how is it that it becomes a tiger so quickly that it's uncontrollable? What happened? Because obviously when you started it, you thought, okay, I'm going to go in this direction. And then you're saying it suddenly just ran away from you.
In that instance, it was because we didn't start off as a little microorganism and then naturally let it grow. We were looking very, very quickly for significant development and growth that we did not control. And to be honest, is there any business that actually really controls its development? You're largely at the whim of the market, of the competition, of your investors, if you have investors, of your sales team, of your partners, all of which is out with your direct control. So so many people set up in business because they want to be the boss and drive the train and have control over their lives to an extent they didn't have before. Yet the reality is very, very quickly it becomes clear to most people that is not the situation.
So this is something that I've been discussing with a few people actually on the last few podcasts I do, the Atom Ventures ones. And because I think people quickly, as you say, feel that things are getting away from them and they have the lack of control, but also it I guess it doesn't, it breeds a sense of, not insecurity in a way, I guess, in that you have no real determination of, so the things that you thought were going to happen have happened in a completely different way than you wanted them to happen. And then it makes you kind of question why you're doing all of this and whether you should be doing this.
I'm not sure it was even that. It was more what we wanted to happen did happen as we planned that they would happen, but somebody else actually controlled the pace of development and they made the final decisions for us. So we couldn't make the customers buy our product. They had to decide to buy. We couldn't make the investors invest in us. They had to choose to invest. We couldn't make the staff that we took paid over come to us until their current employer agreed that they would be taken over. All of these things, which were the most fundamental parts, it felt at the time, and we were not in control of the situation.
So what did that lead to? Did that lead to, obviously, how did that make you guys feel? Looking back on it now, were you actually secretly in control, but just didn't know about it?
I think what I learned from that I've shared with lots of people that I've worked with along the way who have suffered similar feelings is you're never in control. Even when you think you're in control, you're not in control. And here we are now coming out coming out the first wave of coronavirus. But who knows how many more waves still to go. How many businesses at Christmas, end of last year, said, "Do you know what? We've got this all sorted. We're exactly where we want to be. We've got our hands in the steering wheel. We're driving through the gears." And then they lost complete control of their business because coronavirus came along. So I think the real outtake for me for this is if anybody says, "I'm setting up a business, I'm moving into entrepreneurial space because I want control," I would say stop at this moment because you will not be in control of what happens.
Yeah, it's interesting because one of my frustrations is people. But then I was thinking about it before the podcast, I was having a think about it, and then I realized it's people, it's just everything, right? Everything is quite frustrating when it comes to business. It's not just the customers, but it's also the people that you're hiring. And it's always, I guess the frustration for me is always the small things. So it's small questions. I mean, I can't obviously name names because people know who they are, but it's like when you're offering something to someone and then they come back and say, "Oh, well, can I get this? Can I get that?" Well, like, no. And it just adds initial time onto what, a discussion. And it's a distraction that you don't need. And you kind of want to just say, take it or leave it, right? I'm not. But then you also feel that you can't really say that because it's business and you should be trying to do business. But I think over the years, and I was saying this to my co-founder, Sam, is that I say now I'm getting a little bit more belligerent. I think it's now we're in a situation we can do deals with whoever we want to do deals with. We're in a much better position. We're not having to kind of take everything on board. Now I'm more willing to say no. And I think that was something I was saying to, again, discussing with someone a couple of weeks back, is that you have the power to say no in business, right? So if you feel that things are out of control, you can just say, no, I'm not going to do it.
So when you talk about the little things here, and is that about others who micromanage is what, or want to micromanage that frustrates you? That they're not seeing the big picture, letting you drive forward. They want to know all in the minutiae.
No, it's actually nothing to do with people within the business itself. It's just small. It's just, I guess it's, let's say, for example, when you're in a negotiation and everything is negotiated, and then someone goes, "Oh," and then you send out the contract, and then someone goes, "Oh, well, this is not it," and you can go back and say, "Well, actually, here is the written agreement that we've got on email," right?
Yeah.
And it's stuff like that. It's where people are just becoming, just being, I don't know, arsey for no sense of it. It's like we discussed a couple of weeks back where some lady was rude to me, and I still, it's like, it still hurts. But the whole point is like, what's the point? Why send that email, right? There's no need for it. And it's all those small little things that pile up, and just people distracting you with things that are really settled already. And
do you have business relationships where that doesn't happen? And what one defines those?
We do, actually. So we've got the majority of the people that we work with are very happy, right? I mean, it's maybe once. I think the thing is, it's once you've agreed on something and you put it in motion, it's great. Everyone is there. It's just that there are some people that always, pretty much, it's the people who want something for nothing, right? Mm-hmm. You help them out as much as you can, and then they, even though you've given them a lot of help, they can't come back and they just want more. And then that's where you have to say no. And I think that's the frustration, is sometimes you can just be too nice in business. And I think you can do things because you feel it's the right thing to do, but then people don't appreciate that.
Well, particularly when you're in your line of core work, which is as a service provider into business. The perception of services, it should bend to suit its customer requirements, regardless, whatever they are. We will flex to suit you because you're the customer.
Yeah, and I think that's wrong, right? Because actually, now I'm, I think early days you do flex, obviously, because you want to bring more revenue in. Now everything is, we're in a situation now where we've got good stable work and good pipeline coming in. I think it's more about saying, well, people who we've helped, let's say over a few years, who we've given free advice to, when they actually get to doing some paid work. And I had this with a charity, actually. We did like a year of pro bono. And then when it came down to the paid work, which is a very, very small amount of money, like tiny, they suddenly they were like, oh, no, we have to have this, we have to that. And they just became very demanding, not appreciative of the things that we've done for them over the last couple of years. And we just have to break off the relationship. And I think that's it is. But it's also, I mean, that's just for context with clients. There's also people, we're hiring at the moment, right? And it's really funny, some of the conversations you have with people, because we are willing to pay X amount of money, and the people come to us knowing that they want more, and then they go through a process, and at the end they try and demand more. And we're like, well, no, we've been very clear through this process that this is it. So you've just wasted our time now. And I think it's things like that I think are frustrating within business, where people have dragged things out without.
So what advice flows out of this to entrepreneurs?
So my advice is be upfront. I think the thing is, now we are very upfront. If people lie, then you can't do anything about it. But whether it's in hiring now, or whether it's in business, we do have that conversation very early on with companies to see, can they pay? Are they actually how much money they got, their budget? Because we can be flexible on certain things, but then ultimately you got to the point where we spent many years building up our knowledge and having our experience, and that's worth something, right? And we know that there is a value to it. So we're moving much more towards that value-based kind of service.
Yeah, I think that's really interesting, because what you're really saying, what I'm hearing there is be upfront and be ready to say no and exit the relationship really early on.
Yeah. If
it's not going to be productive, get out of that relationship as early as you can. There's nothing worse in the life being sucked out a project, a relationship, or your team by doing work that is just difficult at every turn.
And that we've had this experience. It's been very interesting, because we've had a couple of experiences recently where you've had 3 or 4 meetings. Maybe we've probably spent like a day in meetings over a couple of months. And then when it's come down to actually providing this is the proposal, they're like, oh, well, it's too much. We can't afford that. Can you pay later? And that's when you sit there and go, well, I've just wasted all this time with this one person. And, there's a whole bunch of other things you set in motion as well, right? Yeah. You set in motion, maybe hiring other people. Obviously, we didn't do any of that, but other people will do things like that. They'll end up putting things in motion where thinking things are all agreed, but actually they're not. And so I think right now it's just going to be upfront and say, look, this is going to cost you. Because you don't do the same thing with lawyers and accountants, right? You expect to be paying money for these guys. Yeah. So why were they the other profession? Yeah. Why not with tech?
How do you feel about the world of webinars that has exploded since lockdown came along, and the propensity for being overwhelmed with advice?
There's a lot of them, and we're actually guilty. We're doing one in a couple of weeks on the 22nd. So just to promote that, ourselves and Legalistic, we're doing one to help us bringing together legal and technical advice. So for people who want to procure services, software and services, there are obviously a lot. I think no one's saying anything really new. I think that's the problem, right? There's still all of this talk about the new norm or whatever it is, and life after lockdown. And really, I mean, can we not get past that now? I think if there are some that I do watch because they are specific topics within technology, let's say, which make a lot of sense. But then there's just a lot of fluff out there, right? And they're not to the point. And so I've kind of ignored them.
I'm reminded of when I had my first kid more than 20 years ago now. I remember sitting in a cab in London with my then boss, who was 15 years older than me, I think. So he had been through it all before. And I was doing that reflection when you have a new baby at home, and you're, oh my God, how are you meant to deal with this thing? And I remember saying to him, yeah, the big problem is they don't come with an instruction manual. And Brian said, no, they don't come with an instruction manual, but there are thousands of instruction manuals out there. There are thousands of books around how to raise your child. The problem is finding the one that's right for you and actually just following one. is really, really difficult because you are bombarded with your parents, your in-laws, your friends, your sisters, all giving you advice about how to bring up their child that is based on their experience. And there's an element here, I think, which goes back to that kind of extended nuclear family when it lived under one roof. And really it was grandma who actually got involved in nurturing and helping the granddaughter with the new baby because they had a broader, more settled perspective. And that's one of the things that really frustrates me now. We are not sure, hell, that's part of what I do. That's sort of what I do is offer advice. But there are so many sources of advice, so many books, so many webinars, so many podcasts out there offering a point of view. And how do I then dig through all of this to find the one that's relevant to me? And I hope that what I do and the work that I do is 99% of the time it boils down to do the basic things well. It ain't rocket science.
It's fascinating, right? Because so this is not necessarily a frustration, or maybe it is, I don't know. But there has been an explosion in coaches. And what actually is a little bit frustrating for me when it comes to my other podcast is that everyone seems to be a coach that I interview. And when I start the interview, it's usually about their business, right? And their business is, maybe running dance studios, or it's maybe, one of the guys is selling cookies and donating a meal for every cookie that's bought, which is great. But then suddenly they sneak in their coaching bit. So everyone now seems to have a side hustle, which is providing coaching advice. And they've got a, 3-step tech process, or they've got an acronym. So there was one of the ladies had a 3-step process, 3 Fs. The other guy yesterday has got a SPEAR process. And then there's the guys, a couple of the other podcasts, and they're all great, but they all actually say the same thing. So if you listen to 4 of my podcasts, that encompasses pretty much all of the coaching advice you need, because all of them say exactly the same thing, right? And I think, and then again with the LinkedIn, not only am I getting astrologers and soothsayers, I'm getting thousands of coaches all believing that they can coach me to sign up. But I don't see that they have that. It's all about personal drive, right? And it's not about business coaching, which is where you are different. And I think that's the key. So people aren't coaching about business; they're coaching about you as a person, which is fine, and that's all necessary. But really, people do need to know better advice when it comes to running their business rather than necessarily running themselves. I think that there's a bit of a frustration there. And I guess and I think it's just like, why do you need so many of them? So many.
Well, I think we're in danger of finding a complete explosion on this, with people who lose their jobs as we go through the next change that COVID is going to bring into the workforce, the shape of the workforce, the nature of the workforce. And it is a relatively straightforward thing to do, to set one up as a coach or an advisor. The challenge is making sure you actually know what you're talking about as either a coach or an advisor, and then fitting that well to the right kind of people that will fit with that kind of advice and guidance.
Yeah. I mean, I think we said it on one of the very first podcasts around business coaching being business consulting broken, right? It's trying to find the right person, and there's too many people. I mean, I've seen that just panning out bad advice, right?
Yeah.
That's a.
In preparation for today, I went on and a little bit of looking around the wonderful internet out there. And one of the ones that kept popping up about entrepreneur frustration is around money and the lack of money. I'm not sure I really buy into that, because my kind of point of view on it is, if you've got a great business, a great idea, something worth doing, you should actually be able to access the money relatively simply. And those that are really struggling for funding probably don't really have a business or an idea worth funding to begin with.
So this is so I'm helping out someone at the moment, and there's a frustration there, and little bit is about money, but also it's about inaction, lack of execution, right? And I think that's what underlies a lot of this. So people do complain about money, but then again, I spoke to this other guy who had $40 in his pocket and now is a multimillionaire, right? I mean, how you magic that is a different story. But I think,
that's about attitude.
yeah,
That
well,
goes
that's
right back to the beginning. You're the same as your women who dropped out of college and set up a dance studio. That could have been one dance studio doing one set of dance classes in one location, and she would just about get by. Or you just make, they said a bad word there, make things happen.
But I think that's the thing, right? It's all about execution. So how much investment do you really need? Like, how much money do you? Because the thing is, okay, I can see when you're scaling, but at the very beginning, you should be able to do things at very low cost, and get it out there and just start winning customers, right? Just doing one or two things, and then okay, if you see the money's coming in and you want to grow, that's how that's how I built this business, right? And that's how most people build them sensibly, thinking that you need to go out and have huge amounts of money spent on marketing, huge amounts of money spent on X, Y, and Z things. It's not. I don't think it's truly necessary unless you are looking to own a space and doing like the geo kind of strategy where you give away all the phones and you're going to lose X billion before you make trillions. So
what you're saying then, 4 main frustrations that you and I feel in the world of entrepreneurialism. Number 1 we spoke about was you're actually never in control. So please don't try and aim for control of your business and the environment it is in. Second one is about the small stuff, and don't oversweat the small stuff because that gets in the way of letting the big stuff happen. And if you're around people that are focusing in on the minutiae, move them out your life quickly. Third is around this overwhelming amount of advice and direction that's available, and actually it's just about the basics and doing them right. And then finally is about, or number 4 was about action and inaction, and inaction being the enemy of getting anything done.
Yeah, and I've got a fifth one, red tape. So one of the things recently for me is because we're expanding and hiring new people, suddenly you unlock a whole bunch of governmental red tape, obviously pension, and even the Kickstarter program. So I wanted to hire someone on that program, but then you find the government says you need 30, you need 30 placements as a minimum, and then you have to band together with people in similar industries. And like, well, why all these hurdles, right? Why all these? And I mean, I hate to say the B word, Brexit, but that sounds like it's going nowhere. So that's going to obviously increase even more of the red tape. So that I think is very frustrating, and dealing with the institutions really.
So what should we take away from this then? Can one rise above these frustrations? What can we do about them?
Well, yeah, as I say, don't start a business, right? stay happily in employment and collect your paycheck. I think it's getting the right people on board, right? So it goes a little bit back to that coach and consulting. It's getting the right business coach. Forget your mental health for the moment, right? When you're starting out, go and get the people who've started the business before, who understand what the different levels of red tape you're going to get through, how you have to deal with the banks, all of that bit, and then how you can start hiring, how you can start executing, getting your stuff out there, bringing revenue in, so that if you want to scale and get investment, you can do. I think it's getting that right advisory level. And then once you start actually producing stuff and growing, then go and get your well-being coach, because then you'll need it. But before that,
I wish I could remember what it is, but there's the prayer that is about give me strength to change what I can change, accept what I can't change, and blah blah blah. I'm sure you'll know what that one is, but I think that's a fundamental for me. In terms of frustrations, there are frustrations that you simply will never get over. It is the reality of the world you're dealing with. So work really hard at not getting frustrated by the stuff that will inevitably frustrate you. And in return, focus lots of energy on the areas where you can make progress, that you don't get frustration. And every successful business balances off both of those, because there will be frustrations. That is just a fact of life.
Yeah, and obviously if you don't if you're not willing to accept these challenges, again, don't start a business, right? Because these are the
Which
things.
leads us on to our next podcast, where we are going to be joined by the lovely Emma from Cheshire, who will, I suspect, share some of her frustrations in trying to create her business. But that's another day, and we'll enjoy Emma joining us, and we'll do our first guest interview.
Excellent. I think I'm looking forward to that.
Super.
It'll be interesting to see how that works.
Well, thanks for joining us for this episode of the Real Entrepreneurship Podcast, and looking forward to seeing you next time.
Cheers, guys.